Jimmy Fallon was asking Patricia Williams about finding hope after loss, when something in her brave expression suddenly crumbled. The 45-year-old mother, who had been speaking with quiet strength about her advocacy work moments before, placed her hand over her heart and began to cry. "Jimmy," she said softly, her voice trembling, "I had to decide whether to let my 16-year-old son die so that other children could live." The Tonight Show studio, which had been respectfully listening to her story of resilience, fell into stunned silence. Patricia's confession transformed what had seemed like an inspiring tale of overcoming grief into something much more profound and heartbreaking. Jimmy's supportive expression shifted to one of deep emotion as he realized this wasn't just about loss. This was about the most impossible decision any parent could face. It was August 14th, and Patricia had come on the show to discuss organ donation awareness and her work with grieving families. The interview had been going beautifully, with Patricia sharing her mission to help others navigate tragedy, but when Jimmy asked what gave her the strength to help other families, the composed facade she'd maintained finally broke. "Tommy was riding his motorcycle home from his summer job," Patricia continued, her voice barely audible. "A drunk driver ran a red light and hit him head-on." The senseless nature of the accident made the tragedy even more devastating. The studio fell into complete silence. Jimmy's face showed shock and deep empathy. The audience seemed frozen, confronted with every parent's worst nightmare made real. "How old was Tommy?" Jimmy asked gently, though he already knew the answer would break his heart. Patricia's response was devastating in its simplicity. 16, she whispered, "the age when life should be full of possibilities rather than ending." He was supposed to start his senior year of high school the next week. The future that would never come was evident in every word she spoke. "The doctors said he had massive head trauma," she continued, describing the medical reality they faced. He was on life support, but his brain was gone. The clinical terms couldn't mask the devastating reality no parent should ever face. Jimmy leaned forward in his chair, his entire focus on this mother who was sharing the worst moment of any parent's life. "How long was he on life support?" he asked carefully, understanding the impossible time pressure such decisions involve. 3 days, Patricia replied, the brief timeline emphasizing the urgency of decisions no parent is ever prepared to make. 3 days, to decide whether to keep hope alive or let him go. The choice she'd faced was beyond comprehension. But those weren't really the only options, were they? Jimmy prompted gently, understanding there had been another choice that made her decision even more complex. Patricia's expression showed both pain and purpose. "The doctors asked about organ donation," she said, introducing the impossible decision that would define the rest of her life. "They said Tommy could save other lives." The opportunity to create meaning from tragedy was both gift and burden. The audience was completely silent now, understanding they were witnessing something that transcended entertainment. This wasn't just one mother's story. This was about the impossible choices that define us in our darkest moments. The cameras captured every emotion crossing Patricia's face. "What was your first reaction?" Jimmy asked softly, understanding that the initial response to such a question might be very different from the final decision. Patricia's honesty was devastating. "I said no," she admitted, the natural parental instinct to protect her child evident even in death. "I couldn't bear the thought of them taking pieces of my baby." Her reaction was completely understandable and heartbreaking. "But Tommy had talked about it before," she continued, revealing the conversation that would ultimately guide her decision. "After his friend died in a car accident, he said he wanted to be an organ donor." Her son's own wishes had provided clarity in an impossible moment. Behind the scenes, producers were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't entertainment, this was a mother sharing the most profound decision of her life on live television. They recognized the sacred nature of her story and the importance of letting it be told completely. "What changed your mind?" Jimmy asked, understanding that the journey from no to yes must have been agonizing. Patricia's explanation revealed the thought process that led to her ultimate choice. "I realized I had 2 options," she said, her voice growing stronger as she explained her reasoning. I could keep Tommy's body alive artificially, or I could let him save other people's children. The reframing of the decision in terms of service rather than loss was profound. Tommy always wanted to help people, she continued, describing the son whose character informed her choice. He wanted to be a paramedic, to save lives. The irony that his death could fulfill his life's mission wasn't lost on anyone listening. Jimmy made a decision that would define this moment. He stood up from behind his desk and walked over to sit next to Patricia, abandoning the traditional interview setup. "Patricia, that's an incredible decision to make in your darkest hour," he said gently. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," Patricia replied, looking directly at him. "But it was also the most important." Her conviction about the rightness of her choice was evident despite the ongoing pain. "Tell me about the process," Jimmy said softly, understanding that the practical details might help others facing similar decisions. Patricia's description was both clinical and deeply personal. "They do extensive testing to match recipients," she explained, describing the complex medical process most people never see. Tommy's organs went to 6 different people. The multiplication of her son's impact was staggering to contemplate. "His heart went to a 14-year-old girl in Texas," she continued, personalizing the recipients who had been abstract concepts during the decision. "His liver saved a college student in California." Each person represented a family that wouldn't experience her loss. The vulnerability in her sharing was extraordinary. Jimmy reached over and gently placed his hand on her arm. "Do you know any of the recipients personally?" "I've met 4 of them," Patricia said, her face lighting up despite her tears. "The heart recipient, Sarah, calls me on Tommy's birthday every year. The ongoing connections had created an extended family born from tragedy. She tells me she can feel him," she continued, describing the mysterious connections some recipients report, that his heart beats with love for life. The suggestion that something of Tommy continued in others was both beautiful and comforting. "The kidney recipients both named their next children after Tommy," she added, revealing how deeply his gift had affected the families. "Tommy Johnson and Thomas Martinez." Her son's name living on was a form of immortality. The audience was visibly moved by Patricia's story, many people crying as they imagined making such an impossible choice. Her experience was creating space for thinking about legacy, sacrifice, and the connections that bind us together. "What would you say to other families facing this decision?" Jimmy asked, recognizing that Patricia's words could help others in their darkest moments. Patricia looked directly into the camera. "That it's okay to take time to decide," she said with compassion born from experience. "But remember that your child could be someone else's miracle." Her perspective offered both patience and purpose to grieving families. "And that saying yes doesn't mean giving up on your child," she continued, addressing the fear that might prevent families from considering donation. "It means letting them become heroes." Her reframing could help others see donation as extension rather than ending. "Do you have any regrets?" Jimmy asked, understanding the complexity of emotions around such a permanent decision. Patricia's answer was immediate and certain. "None about the donation," she said firmly. "My only regret is that drunk driver took Tommy from us in the first place." Her anger was appropriately directed at the cause rather than her response to the tragedy. "But I'm proud that Tommy saved 6 lives," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "He accomplished more in death than most people do in a lifetime." Her perspective on her son's legacy was both tragic and inspiring. The studio erupted in applause, but it wasn't celebratory. This was recognition of sacrifice, appreciation for courage, and awe at a mother's ability to create good from devastating loss. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. "What would you want to say to Tommy if he could hear you?" Jimmy asked, understanding that Patricia might have messages she'd never been able to deliver. Her response was immediate and heartfelt. "That I'm proud of him," she said, tears streaming down her face. "That 6 families will never forget his gift." Her love for her son was evident in every word, and that he's still changing lives, she continued, expanding her message beyond the immediate recipients. Every person I help consider organ donation is Tommy still saving lives. Her son's impact continued to multiply through her advocacy. They talked for a few more minutes about the organ donation process, about supporting grieving families, and about the importance of discussing these wishes with loved ones before tragedy strikes. Patricia was more articulate and inspiring than any medical professional who had discussed the topic. When the interview ended, something remarkable happened. Organ donation registration spiked immediately, with thousands of people signing up as donors. Patricia's story had literally created the potential to save thousands of lives. The episode aired exactly as it happened, with Patricia's story resonating far beyond entertainment. Medical organizations used her testimony to encourage donor registration, and families found courage to discuss these difficult topics. Within weeks, Patricia had been invited to speak at medical conferences and donor awareness events. Her unique perspective as someone who had made the ultimate parental decision made her a powerful advocate. The Tonight Show established regular segments about organ donation directly because of Patricia's appearance. They featured stories of donors, recipients, and families, always emphasizing the life-saving potential of this ultimate gift. Jimmy learned something profound that August night that changed how he thought about parental love and sacrifice. Patricia showed me that love doesn't end with death, he reflected later. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child save other children. Patricia Williams' organ donation story became more than a viral moment. It became a catalyst for conversations about end-of-life decisions, family wishes, and the incredible gift that can come from tragedy. Her impossible choice had given hope to thousands of families. Years later, Patricia would say that making Tommy's organs available for donation was both the hardest and most important decision of her life. That night on Jimmy's show, I realized Tommy's story could save more lives, she reflected. Every new donor registration is another child who might live because other parents learned from our tragedy. The lesson of that extraordinary August night was profound. Sometimes our deepest loss becomes our greatest gift to others. And sometimes a mother's impossible choice becomes a beacon of hope for families facing their own darkest hours.